Here's a really interesting question for the month of October. We asked Andy May, Josh Teulker, and Jason Michael, would you rather hunt a scrape near doe bedding or closer to where the buck is bedded? Very specific, but very helpful. Hopefully it helps you guys this fall. Listen to what they have to say. Here we go.
Late October, signing phase, pre-rep phase. Would you rather hunt doe bedding or a scrape? Primary scrape, community scrape.
Probably doe bedding. I think you have a better chance of having more bucks coming through that area than a primary scrape. And I don't like I said, I don't have any data to prove that, but that's what I'd probably set up on some doe bedding. Yeah, I think a buck is probably more apt to stumble upon that kind of thing than a scrape.
Shifting gears a little bit here. So, third week of October, signing phase, right? Would you rather hunt a scrape outside of doe bedding or outside of buck bedding?
Ooh, I'm almost. It's not that it's a tough question, but I'm just going to say outside of buck bedding. I'm at that point in life. I'm going after him. So I was 19, 25, 27. I was there, and I'd walk in and I'd find a scrape, but the hype wasn't there. They didn't even have a cell phone. There was no YouTube to get on there and see how to do it. Licking branch, no one ever said the words. I see a scrape, and different times you're talking to some people, I go, man, he goes, man, I seen a bunch of those scrapes today. Some of them were up this high on that tree.
That's a rub.
Yep, that's a rub. But to just walk around and find something, and then maybe even go 50 yards down that road and find something, and then go 50 yards down that road and find another scrape, you might put 6 or 7 of them together. And it's not too hard to stand there and look at that road that goes to the left and right and go, there's a cornfield out there, and this goes back up a little draw, and it kind of splits, and there's a little point there, and it's rabbit patch briars up in there and all those locusts and oaks. I'm going to get as close to that buck bedding area. Or what I think where deer are coming from, will the doe go through and maybe a 4-point? And then here comes maybe potentially a shooter. So I'm going to take this, maybe I'll put it this way. More than just saying a doe bedding area or a buck bedding area, I'm going to hunt the scrape closest to the cover.
Sure.
That's probably the route I would take, whatever it may be.
Yep.
I walk through a little bit of the woods. It just kind of feels open, and I don't see any really good, thick cover or anything. But then I get in there a couple 100 yards and I see like an opening, and I was like, that looks interesting, So obviously I go check it out, and it's like this opening in the woods, kind of like an oval shaped opening. And in that opening is like 3 or 4 big oak trees, white oak trees. And I was like, oh man, this could be good. So I go in there and there's some acorns on the ground. But what was really cool was under those trees, I mean, at least 4 scrapes under both of them, or all of them. They were just like torn up, like fresh dirt, fresh, leaves kicked up, like a buck, an aggressive buck was in here recently, and he is really working these scrapes. The way the wind was blowing, it was pretty good to, potentially hunt that little opening. But I killed a really big buck here in Michigan, a really wide 9-point. He was like 24 inches wide a few years ago. And I screwed up for 2 years hunting him in a location exactly like this, a little opening in the woods. And every time I hunted that buck, I always thought I needed north winds for the wind to come over kind of come over and like blow me this way. Well, what would happen in those openings, it's probably from, it's an oval shape. So from the bottom to the top was probably, 50, 60 yards. And then the long end was probably like 90. My experience has been that the wind tumbles over the top and then it pushes you back. So even though the sign told me this is where I need to hunt, my experience told me I've been busted in these spots like a bunch, and I feel like big deer know that they can, check these areas that wind swirls, and it's just a dangerous spot, kind of like hunting the bottoms of hill country. So what I did is I looked on my map and I'm like, okay, where do I think this deer's coming from? And there was an area adjacent to that had, it looked like almost like an old clear cut. It wasn't a large area, probably maybe 10 acres. And it was a bunch of younger growth, like younger trees, a lot of chest to head high brush and shrubs, and then some younger trees. But it was just like really thick, clear cut, couldn't see in, couldn't see out. And I was like, I bet she's coming from there. I bet she's bedded in there. So I backed out. I took a big loop around, and there was a pocket. Typically, like in an area like that, like anything that's like kind of brushy like that, there'll be, if there's any structure within that, like a pocket of trees, a little point, a lone tree. Like those are the likely bedding spots. For me to play the wind, get it in my face, I would have had to hunt it would have been the south edge of that. But there was like a north, it's kind of like blowing out of the northwest a little bit. And there was a good pod of trees right there on the edge. And I was like, I feel like if he's in there, he's probably bedded on that little island there. So I didn't want to risk coming close to that edge and potentially bumping him out. So I did a big safe loop around, and I got on the other side of the thicket, and I got up pretty high. And what I thought was, I can see in there a little bit. Maybe I get a glimpse of them. Nothing told me, the sign and everything told me that this deer was going to walk away from me towards those oaks and scrapes. So I was kind of on the opposite side of that thicket, but I got into the thicket, 40 yards. So this is a real important part of this hunt, because as I was sneaking in, I'm setting up my sticks, and I get up, and I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but I hit like a little branch. And I mean, I'm in this area, and probably where that clump of trees is, not far. I mean, it's less than 90 yards or so. So I'm trying to be like ultra quiet. And then there's other little pockets around where, he could be in there if he's in there. But anyway, I hit a little branch. So I'm like, oh man, I was trying to be like really, really quiet. So I get set up, and then all of a sudden, I'm in my saddle, so I'm behind the tree, and I look and I see something coming, and it's a doe. And the doe had heard me, and she comes out of this little thicket that was like, I don't know, 50 yards away. And she comes right to the base of my tree. But because I'm behind the tree, she's on this side of it, and she's looking up there where she heard the noise, and I'm just like motionless. I'm like, please don't bust out of here. And I don't know, she's there for a good 5 minutes or so. She loses interest, turns around, and walks back to the thicket. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I dodged a bullet. That could have been the end of the hunt right there. And I almost screwed it up. So it's important to know which way the wind's blowing here. Where I think this buck could be bedding is straight out in front of me, and my wind is blowing from the north, but it's blowing kind of like just off. So it's blowing a little bit to his left, and every once in a while it's blowing a little more to the left. So it's like, it's safe, but it's also risky. Like I said, I just didn't feel like that deer had any reason to come my way, because all the sign was the other way. So I said, you know what, I'm in this thicket. Like I've had success calling deer, but I've learned that calling deer, mature deer, works in certain locations. It's very location specific, and obviously like certain states, it's more conducive to calling in, better age structure, more competition. But in Michigan, it's really tough. But I am in this deer's bedding area. Like I am in it. If I make a call from here, he's not going to expect that like a hunter or a human is in this thicket, Like I got in quiet. It was a very stealthy approach, a very long setup time, very methodical. So I said, I'm just going to wait. And if I don't see him, around prime time, I'm going to let out a call. So I'll try to explain this best I can. Have you turkey hunted?
Oh,
Yeah.
Turkey hunt a lot.
Turkey hunt. You've probably elk hunted.
Yep.
Turkey and elk can sound very different, and they can sound like they're in different locations depending on which way they're facing. So you can have a turkey on the ridge over facing the other way, gobbling, and it sounds like it's a mile away. And then the thing turns around and gobbles, and it sounds like it's right in your face. So I've learned that you can throw your call, you can cast your call to make it sound like you're in a different location. So it was getting down to that last 45 minutes. I was like, I'm just gonna let him know there's a buck in the thicket. I'm not trying to like rattle him up like Texas, but I'm gonna let him know there's a buck in this thicket. And if he wants to come over and investigate, he can. If not, I'll hunt him another day. So what I did is I turned to my right. So my wind's blowing this way. And I know mature bucks tend to circle downwind. So I cast my call up back over my right shoulder. I'm trying to make him sound like I'm a little bit further away and a little bit further to my right. So what I'm trying to do is like, if he's going to come in, I want him, I know he's going to J hook in if he's an older deer. That's just what they do. But I'm trying to cast my call in such a way that he might thread the needle and just miss my scent stream, as opposed to blowing it right at him where he's going to pinpoint my location, circle downwind and get me. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
So I turn and I cast it. I put my hand up at the end of the tube just to give it a little more throw, and I cast it to where I'm trying to pretend where this buck is. And I just do a little, like I like to do like a brrr, short, like a long drawn out, kind of like a, I don't know what kind of grunt it is, but I've had really good luck just to kind of like brrr, like that. And then I have a little nightingale kind of like rattling thing, and I just do a little bit of click, 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 like he's just clicking his antlers in the branches, and that's it. Put it in my pack. He heard it. It's quiet enough. That's it. If he comes, he comes, and if he doesn't, maybe he's not even in here. I don't know, but so I'm just sitting there, and about 20 minutes goes by. So I think like, he's not in here, or he's, not interested. And I start hearing footsteps kind of slosh around in the water. So there's a deer out in that thicket, in that little pocket of trees, right where I expected a deer to possibly bed. I hear something walking around. There's a little, it's a little wet in there. It's a little lowland. And I'm like, oh man, is that a deer? And then I hear it kind of coming to my left, and it's coming, my scent stream is blowing like this to my left, it kind of towards him, and he's kind of going that way. And I'm like, oh crap, and then all of a sudden it's just silent, and I hear a snort wheeze. It's like, and I'm like, no way. Like, there's no way that this buck is in here. So I'm getting excited now, right? And now I hear the footsteps. They're coming, and they're getting closer to me. So he's doing his J hook, just like mature bucks do. He's doing his J hook, coming into the call, but he's J hooking to where he thought the call was from, not to where I'm at. And it is. My wind is just missing him, man. It's just missing him, but he's threading that edge, and he's coming. And all of a sudden I see a figure through. It's like a real high stem count, real brushy. And I'm looking through there, and I see a figure coming. So I get ready, and I have no idea what's on this deer's head. It was like, if I see a good rack, I'm shooting. And he steps out, and I see like a really nice side, like probably like a mid 130s side. And then the other side is like this big, weird, like octopus looking thing. And I'm like, whoa, that's cool. We don't get a lot of non-typicals here. We get a lot of lopsided racks like that, but it's from the deer getting shot. Like I get dozens of deer with holes in them every year on camera, dozens of bucks. So we get that lopsided, goofy side a ton here. And, I'm shooting him, he looks like a big body, cool rack. So he's there, he's looking, and he's kind of scanning. He's looking up where I casted that call. And here he comes, and he does a little moon, kind of like a moon travel shape. And he gives me a nice broadside shot at like 24 yards. So it was just so cool, man, the way that came together.